are some of the secrets, the techniques that you can use to actually make sure that everybody gets to know about your event? And are there any differences? Are there differences in, well, this is a live event, I don't need to worry about my hybrid event. So what kind of considerations do we need to have there? So she's going to have a session with us. And I see Kursha has just magically appeared to my right-hand side. So welcome, Kursha. I hope you were listening a little bit to Mike earlier. So you are our final speaker of the afternoon. But yeah, we are here. We're coming to you from Abu Dhabi. Outside, we've got a gorgeous blue day and sunshine and lots of nice temperature. And I'm sure it's lovely where you are as well. We have an online audience that are sending in questions like there's no tomorrow. So that's really good. So expect a few questions, but I'm going to pass over to you and take your tips on how you market your hybrid and online event. And I will be back shortly to pick up the questions and to have a chat with you at the end. So take it away.
Okay, thank you very much, Paul. And I hope everybody over there and online is having a great day. Sounds like you've got some wonderful weather. We've actually got some decent weather over here in Oxfordshire, although I'm sure we're not quite enjoying the warmth you're having over there in Abu Dhabi. I hope you've enjoyed the sessions already at Event Camp today, and I'm delighted to have been asked to run this final session of the first day of Event Camp over there in Abu Dhabi. As Paul said, my session is going to be looking specifically at marketing of hybrid events, and indeed whether this should be approached any differently from some of the techniques used to market traditional face-to-face events. I think Paul's given me a bit of an introduction already, but just briefly, my name is Kursha Woodgate and I'm Managing Director of Mexia Communications. We are a no-nonsense PR and content marketing agency with a focus on the meetings and events sector. So I have around 20 minutes or so to talk to you today, and there are two core components to my presentation. For the first part, what I'd like to do is take a moment to step back in terms of how you approach marketing of your hybrid event, and to look at the bigger picture in terms of marketing mix and some tips and techniques you can think about there when you're promoting your hybrid event. And in the second half, what I'd like to do is actually share a case study of a recent example of a hybrid event that we were involved in promoting on behalf of one of our clients, which is Central Hall, Westminster, based in London. So that was quite a recent event just last month, and hopefully there'll be some interesting insights for you to take away there. So I'm just going to bring on my slides for you. Okay. And hopefully that's now on screen. Is that all working for you over there, Paul? Right, excellent. Okay, so in terms of marketing a hybrid event, what are the key things that you need to be thinking about? Well, I'm sure I don't need to tell you as professional event organisers that once you have an event set up, the first thing we want to do is to get out there and spread the word, ensure that everybody's talking about your event. You create a real buzz and make everyone aware of it so that you can get those all-important bums on seats and people attending the event. What I'd like to get you to think about really is something which I think is quite a healthy exercise to do, is to step back for a moment and try and consider the bigger picture when you're marketing your hybrid event in terms of the marketing mix. So, not rocket science there. I'm sure many of you are very familiar with the 4 Ps of marketing, and indeed with the extended mix for services of the 7 Ps. But I do think it's a healthy exercise to take a moment to step back and really think about product, price, place and promotion when you're putting together the marketing for a hybrid event. For me, the cornerstone to a successful event, hybrid or face-to-face, is really thinking about your product. In terms of a hybrid, this involves a number of components. Obviously, I'm sure we've all heard the importance of content, and this is nothing new in terms of conferences and events. The content is absolutely critical, and these days it's even more critical in terms of ensuring that your content is rich, it's valid and appropriate to the audience. But in terms of a hybrid event, that product also involves thinking about how are you actually going to structure that hybrid event. What are potentially the platforms that you're going to use to construct that event? Is it just going to be a video stream? Is it going to be a fully integrated chat functionality? What sorts of tools are available to you? Things like, for example, Cisco's WebEx on 24, or are you going to think about a fully integrated system, something like Wavecast Pro, that allows you to have social media integration live with your hybrid event? So it's really important to think about how you actually construct the product and what that's going to mean in terms of the experience to both your virtual attendee and your face-to-face attendee. It's also important to think about what is the purpose of having the hybrid? Why have you chosen to have this hybrid event as opposed to a pure face-to-face event, or as opposed to potentially just an online event? What is it that your virtual and remote attendee is going to get from attending your event? So really invest a good deal of time in actually constructing your product. This also applies to potentially the speakers that you have involved in your event. I believe Alan Stevens addressed some of that today in one of his sessions, looking at perhaps the experience of your speakers in terms of producing content that is valid for a remote audience and a live audience. So really think about how you're going to put the elements of the hybrid event together to construct a really valuable proposition with your product. In terms of price, when it comes to a hybrid event, certainly for me personally, I think any of the sort of hybrid or virtual events I've been involved in have not had a price applied to them. But I know certainly for a number of years, one discussion amongst events professionals has been a concern over the potential erosion of a revenue stream from virtual and online events versus face-to-face attendance. The evidence to date has been that it's not the case that virtual events remove revenue opportunities from live events, in fact that they enhance it. But it might be something that you really want to think about. Is it something you want to put a price on? Will that affect attendance? Will that become a barrier? How do you want to approach it? Certainly something to consider when you're putting a hybrid event together. In terms of place, obviously for the virtual attendee, they're going to be registering online. But really, in terms of promoting, what I mean by place is to just really think about where can people access the hybrid event. Is there a hub potentially in a separate location they can attend, or is it purely online? Can they only register for your event on your registration page, or are you going to make it accessible via other third-party sites, etc.? And then finally, on to the P, which for me, I think many people consider to be marketing, which is the promotion of your event. What are the tips and techniques and things to think about when you're actually promoting a hybrid event? In terms of your remote audience, you really are targeting people who are comfortable with, if you like, hanging out online. And so you would imagine that digital communications are naturally going to play an important part in marketing your hybrid event. I recently saw a report from On24, which was looking at webinars. It was a benchmarking report from 2013, and in terms of the marketing techniques used there was a big push for email marketing still. I think it was 80% of the marketing for webinars was done using email marketing. And so email is still a really, really valuable tool, particularly when you're going to be using a qualified database of contacts and a very sort of segmented target audience. The email marketing program is going to be a core element of promoting your hybrid, driven by content, which of course I'll come on to a little more in just a moment. I'm not sure if many of you out there are familiar with marketing automation tools and platforms, but this is quite a kind of growing market, and there's a whole range of very rich functionality available. The reason I put it associated with email there is, for me, marketing automation is very sophisticated, but it's the simplest way of describing it, if you're not familiar with it, would be email marketing on steroids. So any of you marketing automation pundits out there want to shoot me down in flames, please do. But for me, it really is a very sophisticated email marketing tool. It's quite a sizable investment, marketing automation. Some of the key platforms out there you may be familiar with, things like Oracle, Eloqua, Marketo, Adobe acquired Neolane recently, Silverpop. There's a whole host of them out there. But what marketing automation tools allow you to do is to develop some incredibly clever and sophisticated email marketing techniques using things like lead scoring, lead nurturing, and helping you to profile digital behavior. So they're quite a sizable investment. So obviously it would depend on the size and scope of the sort of hybrid event that you're looking to put on, but possibly marketing automation tools might be something you'd like to consider. It's no myth that social media and the power and reach of social media has exploded in terms of usage for marketing. And B2B marketers in particular are increasingly incorporating social media activities as a core element to communications. So when we're thinking about hybrid events, we're thinking about engaging people online, and where better to do that than using social media platforms. Not only in terms of promoting the fact that your event's happening, but one of the things I think is truly valuable out of social media from a marketer's perspective is the ability to actually ask your audience what sorts of topics they're interested in. I said right up front that the product really was the cornerstone of a successful hybrid event. And with social media, you have an opportunity to actually go out to a community, find out what makes them tick, understand what sorts of content is going to be interesting to them. So it's a really valuable way of actually helping create the content for your hybrid event, not just for spreading the word. And you'll notice a theme, really, that content keeps cropping up as I'm chatting here. Content is the underlying theme that drives all of these techniques. So it's really, really important to think hard about what is the kind of content that's going to interest my target audience. Take the time to really develop valuable content that's going to engage them. And actually, one technique we use is to think a little bit like an editorial team. Come up with topics and themes, and then actually plan a calendar of editorial content. And that can be a combination of written material, of video, of infographics, of white papers, case studies, a whole host of things. But actually building that content will really help promote your event and will also help support the content at the event as well. So just summarising a few tips generally for marketing a hybrid. As I mentioned earlier, really refine your product. What is the purpose of your hybrid event? Think about how accessible and digestible it's going to be for your virtual audience and also for the face-to-face audience. Think about using the multiple channels, many of them digital, but don't forget other techniques, non-digital. For example, PR. That's something we use quite effectively with the Central Hall Westminster case study that I'll share with you in a moment. It's also important to create a hub for your content. So things like creating either a blog or a landing page where you can actually collate all of the interesting content that you've started to build, drive traffic there, and really do sort of build up your knowledge base, if you like, and valuable content for your target audience. It's really important that you focus on quality content rather than just putting anything together for the sake of content. Don't blog for blogging's sake, as we say here in the Mexia office, but really think about what's going to tick the boxes and stand out from the crowd. There's really something which I like to call the content avalanche going on at the moment. There's an awful lot out there, so make sure that it's relevant, compelling, and valuable to your audience. So how does this all work in practice? Well, we were recently involved in marketing a hybrid event on behalf of one of our clients, Central Hall Westminster in London. This was part of a bigger campaign looking at events technology now and into the future. It's a campaign called Meet the Future at Central Hall. And this event, which was hosted in February, so just a month ago, was the first event as part of the campaign. So what we were looking at doing was really looking at events technology now as this early stage of the campaign. What we found was that still a critical aspect of events technology is Wi-Fi that is reliable at venues. And I think Mike was just talking a little bit about Wi-Fi a moment ago. So this still is quite a kind of burning issue for events organisers. So what we wanted to do with Central Hall Westminster was to really get together the venues, the technology providers, and the event planners, both from association sector, corporate and agent, into a room face-to-face, and actually have quite a kind of practical discussion around what are the issues that are coming up on a day-to-day basis with regard to kind of talking the same language as a starting point at least. We had, I think it was around 14 people in the room from international associations, in-house planners, technology people from the venue, Wi-Fi specialists and industry associations. And then we invited a virtual community to join the event. So what did we do to spread the word on this event? Well, Central Hall Westminster worked through their own database of contacts. I've already mentioned email marketing. To really, obviously that was a qualified community that they could tap into immediately, and then leveraging personal relationships and word of mouth invitations as well. But that was certainly an element of the mix. I touched on the idea of using PR, so traditional media PR with trade press. In this instance, we were focusing obviously on professional event organisers. We are a specialist PR company, so we leveraged the opportunity to raise the profile of the event through trade media. This worked very well to get people engaged from the outset. I touched on the idea of creating a hub for your content. So we had a landing page. We worked with Central Hall Westminster they created a landing page as a sub-page on their website. And we developed a guest blog. So we worked with technology companies. We qualified and vetted the content to start to build up a raft of material around some of the topics and issues relating to events technology. And that's ongoing today, as it's still part of the ongoing Meet the Future campaign. We leverage social media in a really powerful way. The Central Hall Westminster Twitter feed, we use that to actually ask the audience about what sort of topics they wanted to cover in the hybrid event. So that did provide us with some useful insight, as I mentioned earlier. We leveraged LinkedIn, both the company page for Central Hall Westminster for LinkedIn, but also looking at interest groups. I'm sure many of you belong to interest groups on LinkedIn yourselves. That was a great way of engaging communities and driving traffic to the landing page. We also created a series of YouTube clips, sort of previewing some of the issues related to the campaign. So we kind of did a bit of everything in terms of driving traffic. And finally on there, we leveraged advocates. So some of the speakers who were being involved, encouraged them to share information about the event and spread the word as well. So in terms of the results, we had a fantastic interaction during the event. There were some really, really specific questions, things, about specific bandwidth and what channels you should be on with your Wi-Fi, etc. We had over 100 people sign up to the online event, which for us was a great result. And in terms of the average dropout rate for a webinar, I referenced earlier a benchmarking report recently from On24, which I think said it was around a 42% was the average attendance, and we actually gained 70% attendance. And for me, I believe that was because we focused so heavily on creating really specific content. We had things like case studies of the good, the bad and the ugly of Wi-Fi, and we had some helpful checklists for people. So lots of really valuable content. And people actually followed up from the event requesting the content. We had some excellent feedback from the online audience as well. We had some media join in as virtual attendees at the event, and had some great PR coverage as a result. And the great news is that this is part of a longer-term campaign on behalf of Central Hall Westminster, so it really has got the campaign off to a flying start and kind of fueled the discussion and the debate, and we're gearing up to round 2, which will be in June, which will be a full live event. But certainly for this initial one, we were very pleased with the results for the online community. So in terms of a few takeaways then, just to sum up before we move into questions, start with the basics when thinking about marketing your hybrid event. For me, focus on getting the product right first, and then the rest will follow easily. Content is king. Take a moment to really think about valuable content and what's going to appeal to your audiences. Creating a hub allows you to drive traffic and to host that content and enrich the experience. So think about a blog or a landing page and how you're going to create that hub of activity. Think like an editor, if you like. How are you going to develop that content, and then build a plan for using multiple channels to spread the word and to engage your community. Don't forget to build advocates. It's nothing better than a bit of word of mouth. So leverage any speakers or relationships you have to help spread the word amongst your community. And a final thought here, don't panic if bookings flood in late. Apparently it is quite common to get people to sign up to virtual events quite sort of close to the date, which is a little bit straining on the nerves for event organisers, but this is kind of the norm. So that's one sort of ray of hope there to take away, hopefully, from my session. So I think I'm now ready for questions. I'm just going to move across to get back into the video.
So thank you very much, Kursha. We were watching your slides avidly, and great to see you back with us. And yeah, we've got some questions. One of it's an interesting one. This whole idea of creating content. I mean, do you think that prior to the event that there ought to be more content created to say, right, this is a taster of what's coming up? Do you think that we leave events? And this was a question I asked Alan Stevens earlier today. I said, well, do you think that speakers should be putting out their content of the event earlier so that you have much more of a kind of richer debate maybe at the meeting itself? Is there any shift that you're seeing in what you're being asked to promote in terms of PR and marketing of events?
I think if you can create that content ahead of the event, then, you know, I mentioned earlier the word content avalanche. There's a lot of content out there now, so there's a lot of competition for delegate attention. So I think the bar has been raised, basically, and the challenge is out there. If you are someone for your event, if you can create that content ahead of the event, you're more likely to engage, you're more likely to deliver a richer experience. It takes effort, of course, to create that content, but I do think that is a trend that you're going to see growing, yes.
Right, okay. And in your experience, do you think that when people say, okay, I want to put on a hybrid or an online event, do you think they have a clear idea as to what they'd like to achieve as outcomes? I mean, we are being a bit provocative today, so, you know, say by all means what you think on that, or is it still a little bit of an add-on? And what's your experience so far?
I think it's still very embryonic, if I'm honest, and I think people are slightly experimenting with hybrid, and even the term hybrid is cause for debate. I've been at events where there's been quite heated debates about what involves a hybrid and what's a live stream. You know, it's different things for different people. So I think there's still a little bit of uncertainty over exactly what's going to be achieved with the hybrid. I mean, my last point on the slide there about don't panic if the bookings flood in late, I think that's a whole game changer for event organisers in how people register and commit to events. It's very fluid now and very quick. So in terms of setting expectations, that's a challenge, I think, for event organisers moving forward.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, because we decided for Event Camp Middle East 2014 that we were not going to put on a registration page on any website or any link, so people could go directly onto the viewing page. They could see all the presentations there. They could keep up with what was happening, but we had no idea of numbers, and it was a bit scary. We were dependent on people like yourself getting the message out as speakers to help us with that as champions. But before we came in this morning, we didn't know how many people were going to turn up, how many would be online, how many would actually be looking at it later on demand. But a gateway to put in their way didn't seem to be the right approach for this particular event. So we had nothing to go on. So we were panicking, but we had no idea. So,
but I think that goes back to your objectives, doesn't it? So your objective was to make this as open as possible, to have no barrier there whatsoever. Whereas there may be an objective to data capture certain people, and certainly I would imagine as event organisers there's a certain pressure to have some statistics and to demonstrate ROI. So, you know, and if it is going to be a hybrid rather than just a kind of, if you like, webinar, if it's a group of people, for example, in the Central Hall Westminster case study, there was a live event with people there. So there was a commitment from multiple people to be there. It wasn't kind of just one person presenting. There were multiple people having a debate. So if you have no indication of what the online audience is going to be until the very last minute, that's quite scary in terms of commitment from the venue and the event organiser. You know, but I do think it's changing. It's becoming more challenging. which is why the content, for me, the content is important. Thinking not only in terms of creating that content beforehand so that you can share and build a buzz, but also just making sure you really have got something valuable that the event is going to deliver.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's brilliant. And I know I've got a question for you. So this question is coming in from Josh, who's over in New Zealand right now. So he's had his rest and he's got up again, so that's fantastic. So hi, Kursha, thanks for your presentation. It was very interesting. How important do you think marketing a hybrid event during the event itself is? Well, yeah, interesting question, Josh. Thank you for that.
Very interesting question, and given what I just said about often it floods in late, I do think it's still quite important, because I think increasingly people make decisions kind of on a daily basis. Showing my age here now, but I attended an event recently with a professor talking about generational differences, and he was talking about millennials, and I kind of say, as the owner, aka mum of two millennials, I find it quite interesting to see how differently they behave, and everything being so dynamic and quick, and you know, they're multitasking. So not that they're quite in the workplace yet, but I do think there is a bit of a shift towards people, you know, they do decide on the spur of the moment to perhaps join in. So I think that's a very valid point. I do think there's still scope to extend your audience whilst the event's on, for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the techniques that we've been using all day today as well. Is to constantly keep referring people back to where they can see this, how they can join in the conversation. And for us at Event Camp, it's not about finishing today or tomorrow. It's about the conversation that goes on long after, through some of the, you know, the points that people have made, the points that have been raised by speakers. So we're encouraging all of the people to still send you questions and to say, well, yeah, okay, what would you do in this scenario? So our conversation at the end of tomorrow is not finished by any stretch. Now, are you happy for people to follow you on Twitter? Is that their best way of being able to connect with you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. At Mexia PR, MEXIA PR is me personally. So yeah, absolutely happy for people to interact on Twitter, and via the Mexia website, people can find us and contact us, Mexia Communications. Definitely happy to share any insights there. I referenced a benchmarking report as well, which I can send people links to if they want that too. It was about webinars. In fact, they are preparing the 2014 one, I believe, at the moment. It's not quite ready yet. So
well, that would be great, because Show Gizmo, they've put an app together for this event, and what we're doing is we're concentrating a number of links and other things in there, and documents that can be uploaded. Josh is working away on that with the team in New Zealand, so we're going to use that, and we're also put links to the viewing page as well, so that people can access the on-demand version of this, and also be signposted elsewhere. So that would be really useful. So Kursha Woodgate from Mexia Communications, thank you very much for being with us in Abu Dhabi this afternoon. The audience here are showing their appreciation in a normal way. So I will bid you good afternoon, and hopefully we'll see you, or you might be able to catch us tomorrow as we go through the program tomorrow. Thanks again.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Bye.